Now let's take a look at the African continent. South Africa was once the darling of the African economy, but we see that we're competing with very, very strong economies, specifically in Nigeria and other countries like that. So where are we standing at the moment in Africa?
Well, we, of course, because of our low growth rate, we bring down the average GDP growth rate of the entire African continent. When you look,
it's embarrassing.
it is embarrassing, and it's rather sad when you look at a table of GDP growth rates for most of Africa. We just about rock bottom on that particular table. Look, I think it's true to say that the Nigerias of this world, the Mozambiques of this world, have started from a very different base to us. Their economies were virtually non-existent 10 years ago. Within the 10-year period, they've grown, and I think they've grown at very rapid growth rates. So I think we have to look at where we start from and the nature of our economies as well when looking at this. But still, we are lagging in terms of the African continent. We are also lagging not only in terms of Africa, but we are starting to see our global competitiveness lag globally as well. We are shifting down the global competitiveness index. Other countries are looking pretty good, not only on the African continent, Southeast Asia, even some Latin American countries looking more favorable than ever before. The global environment and the African environment has become so competitive over the course of the last number of years, and South Africa simply hasn't kept pace with it on a variety of fronts. Our labor relations regime is indeed ailing. Our manufacturing sector is not providing what it should in terms of job creation and export-oriented growth for South Africa. And obviously, our mining industry has been severely affected by industrial unrest and global factors relating to the commodity super cycle as well. So I think within Africa, we've lost our luster. Other countries have got they're the flavor of the month or the flavor of the year, so to speak. The world will be watching Nigeria going forward and Kenya. What's going for us, of course, in South Africa is that we still have relatively good infrastructure. We still have relatively good internal skills within the country, and we still attract foreign direct investment into South Africa, despite the Nigerias and the Kenyas and the Ghanas looking pretty good. But it's just a lot more competitive than it ever has been before, and we've got to get our act together. Otherwise, business will go elsewhere. They won't use South Africa necessarily as a conduit into the African continent.
In fact, a recent study by The Economist showed that private enterprises internationally are looking to get into Africa through other countries and not South Africa anymore. So what do we do to attract that commerce back?
You know, I don't think there's any magic to the options that we need to encourage in South Africa. We need a more stable labor relations regime, full stop. You cannot have a position where days and days and days every single year are lost to industrial unrest in the country. This certainly is an impediment to foreigners looking at South Africa as an option, especially when it comes to the manufacturing sector. Services, of course, are fine, relatively fine within South Africa. But when it comes to job creation, big job creation programs, South Africa is not going to get the lion's share of that. Foreign investors are going to look elsewhere. We've also got to up our GDP within South Africa. Our overall our growth rate has to result in a wealthier population over time, a wealthier population that will purchase goods and services. And indeed, it looks as though South Africa is stagnating on that particular front as well. So look, there's a combination of policy incentives, inducements, and good economic policy that needs to be introduced in South Africa. You take Nigeria, for example. Nigeria, at least in part, privatized their power sector within that particular country. Now, Nigeria is not without its power problems, as we know, but still, they've gone some way to acknowledging that the state cannot be the key business player in the economy. In South Africa, we still, of course, are facing a debate about the role of the state. And we in this country have to get our heads around the fact that the state doesn't necessarily do everything efficiently, and that alternative economic models that include aspects of privatization need to be considered within South Africa. Other African countries have moved way beyond the ideological debates about private control or state intervention. They go with what is needed, full stop. And we still have to accept that. But I think we're getting to that point in South Africa where it's getting to where, in fact, the deterioration is so dramatic that I think private sector partnerships are going to have to be one of the core issues that we look at into the future.